Welcome to Study Session 2, Sources and Dynamics of Human Resources. Economics of Population. Population refers to the total number of people residing in a defined geographical space or area at a particular period of time. Therefore, economics are interested in the growth and efficiency of population. Population growth itself is neither good nor bad. It depends on the structure of the population and the angle from which it is explained. From consumption angle, population growth means more people to feed. This can be seen as a problem if the growth of food is lower compared to the growth of population. From the production angle, it implies more people to work and organize production process. This could be seen as a source of development only if the majority of the population is within the production age. The life cycle of any economy is in 3 stages. Stage 1, dependent, from 0 to 14 years. Stage 2, productive, from 15 to 59 years. Stage 3, dependent, from 60 and above. This invariably means that the quality of the population or labor force determines if population growth can be seen to be good or bad. Before the 20th century, the world's population experienced some modest growth, but population grew at an unprecedented rate during the 20th century and has continued to grow rapidly since. The 20th century began with 1.6 billion, and at the end of that century, those two numbers had simply reversed to 6.1 billion. An overview of the world's population reveals that between 1950 and 2010, it grew more than 4.4 billion in 60 years. An overview of the world's population revealed that as at 2010, the world's population was estimated to be around 6.9 billion, and it is projected that the world's population will reach 9.3 billion in 2050. The breakdown of world's population shows that more than 30% of the world's population lives in 2 countries, China and India. 15 countries account for more than 40% of the world's population, out of which there are just 2 African countries, Nigeria and Egypt. 2 countries from North America, namely Mexico and United States of America. 1 country from South America, Brazil. 1 European country, Russia, and the rest are in Asia. By simple calculation, Asia remains the most populated continent on planet Earth. In relation to the productivity of population growth, 50% of China's population is within the productive age. This is one of the major reasons why cost of production in China is very low compared to other countries. Based on this, and coupled with the fast-growing technology in China, most manufacturing companies are now moving their product plants to China. From an economic point of view, China's population is a plus to their development process. Consider Nigeria's population, whose majority is within the dependent age. Population growth in Nigeria is a plus to industrialized countries because of the consuming nature of Nigeria. These industrialized countries see Nigeria as a ready market to dispose their goods. In line with their argument, population growth is not a plus to Nigerian economy at present. Nigeria alone is home to about 50% of the West African population. It is the largest demographic power in Africa and the 8th in the world, with an estimated population of 148 million in 2007. Importance of population. 1. Poverty. This is a situation where one cannot afford the basic amenities of life. It is regarded as absolute poverty. Poverty can be defined broadly as insufficient economic income and assets, inadequate education, poor health, and incapacity to develop the potential for a creative and productive life. Although it is not clear whether population growth causes poverty in the long run or not, it is clear that high fertility leading to rapidly growing population will increase the number of people living in poverty in the short run, and also in some cases makes escape from poverty more difficult. Evidence has shown that more than 25% of the world's population lives in poverty, estimated to be about 1.8 billion people. Poverty can also be seen as a situation in which people don't have access to the basic amenities such as food, clothing, and shelter. High population growth imposes a lot of pressure on the poor, especially on goods and services they need to survive. Central to debate on poverty is the issue of food. Rapid population makes the problem of food security difficult to deal with. A study of population is necessary to help people move away from hunger. The immediate reason for world hunger today is not world total production, but on distribution, which is inequitable. Rapid population growth may make food insecurity problem intractable. By increasing human demand for food production and distribution, population growth increases the chances that many countries will become dependent on food imports. While many world food exporters could benefit economically from this, the likelihood of many countries will be unable to pay for the food their people need raises the risk of dependence on food aid or, in the alternative, growing hunger. 2. Jobs. High population growth indicates that average wage rate in relation to capital cost will decrease. This because it is only few economies in the world that can afford to provide jobs for job seekers. This implies that there is need for most countries to control their population in order for them to be able to account for their citizens. There is general consensus in economics that ceteris paribus, increases in the size of labor force tend to bring about decreases in average wage relative to capital costs. The problem now arises when it is impossible to reduce wages even in the face of rapid population growth. This can lead to high unemployment and underemployment, which in turn of reduce the cost of labor. While many factors influence unemployment rates and average wages unemployment, one is the relative balance between the numbers of people wanting to work, the amount of employment available, and the wages demand will fill the available jobs as inexpensively as employers as possible. This is the basic principle of demand and supply. While the influence on rapid population growth on high wage job is uncertain, few economies can generate enough of these jobs to accommodate annual increase in job seekers. Government must thus grapple with the problem of resource scarcity and inequality. In the economy, more people may mean that a country can produce and consume more goods and services, leading to economic growth. Yet, this can only occur when employment opportunities grow at least as far as the labor force and when people have access to the necessary education and transport. Rapid population that are needed for a solidly working economy. It should be noted that when the growth of a country's labor force outpaces its job creation, it is only logical that people will seek employment in other areas or countries. The hypothesis of demographic dividend by David Bloom and others suggests, however, that in periods of higher proportion of working population, economies can reap enormous benefits by providing appropriate policies that will make sure that youths and others in the working age population are gainfully employed. 3. Migration. Population growth is one of the key factors accounting for the development of urbanization, and it is known fact that urban poor often lack access to the communal and other non-monetary assets, which at some times serve as buffer for the rural poor. While the provision of necessities of life is not available, migration becomes an attractive alternative. Hence, people migrate from rural to urban areas. Incidentally, this also have effects on emigration if a particular country cannot provide the basic needs for the citizens. This is one of the reasons why emigrations from developing countries to the developed countries are on the increase. Most of the citizens of the developing countries are emigrating so as to look for greener pastures in other countries. The implication of this to that economy is that there would be a high level of brain drain syndrome. and this has effect on the growth and development of that country. 4. Quantity and quality of social services. The pressures relating to population growth contribute to a lack of adequate home, undermine social services, especially health and education and transportation networks on which the poor depend for well-being and livelihood. The rate at which population grows determines the ability of the government of the country to provide quality education for its citizens. This because increase in population affects government expenditure per pupil. If there is large capacity or structure to cater for this increase, population growth will be beneficial in the long run. 5. Environmental issue. The sustainability of both human resource and natural resource depends on how environmental issue is handled. Which human beings are resourceful? The issue of clean water, food security, health, and house and other resources must share the earth planet for human beings to survive. The reason why the pessimist theories are worried about population growth is that population increase can exceed the carrying capacity of the earth. For example, is the problem of global warming, in which the temperature of the earth in the last 100 years has increased by 2 degrees centigrade, thus causing environmental disasters. 6. Conflict issue. We need to understand population so as to understand the issue of conflict among different nations in the world. Most conflict in this world arises as a result of poor resource allocation and utilization. There are 3 important ways by which population contributes to the resource problem. 1. As population increases, it leads to resource subdivision. 2. As population increases, it leads to resource depletion. 3. As population increases, it leads to degradation of the resource base. For example, in agriculture, a great number of people divide a fixed quality of cropland. If people increase from 10 to 100 and they have 5 acres of land, as the people increase, the amount of land given to each person reduces and the farmland becomes depleted. Even if technology, fertilizer is used, the value is still depleted and then later leads to almost total degradation. The combination of these 3 above resource problem with issues like inequality, ethnicity, and tribal differences would lead to incessant conflict among communities and nations in the world. Determinants of fertility. The fertility rate is the average number of children per woman of childbearing age within a population. Fertility can be regarded as the entry of individuals into life, while their departure is regarded as mortality. The rate at which the population of a country increases can be measured quantitatively through natural increase and net international migration. By natural increase, it means excess of births over deaths, or the difference between fertility rate and mortality rate over a period of time. Net international migration, on the other hand, was an important measure of population growth in the 19th and early 20th century in countries like the US, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, and some parts of West Europe. In developing countries, that is Nigeria, the effective way to measure population increase is through differences in birth rate and death rate. Fertility rates in most developing countries, especially in Africa, are generally high compared to other parts of the world. Fertility rates can be measured in the following ways. 1. Crude birth rate, CBR. This is defined as the total number of children born divided by the total population of the country, always measured per thousand. 2. Age-specific fertility rate. This is defined as the total number of births by women of specific age divided by total population of aged women. 3. Total fertility rate. This is defined as the average number of children a woman would have, assuming that current age-specific birth rate remained constant throughout her childbearing age, 15 to 49 years of age. Determinants of fertility: the demand for children. There are two main approaches to this demand: the one proposed by demographers and the one proposed by economists. We will consider the synthesized model, which combines the two approaches. The demand for children originates from the theory of consumer behavior, in which individuals maximize utility subject to constraints. The outcome is a demand function for childbirth. Given the demand function, various factors determine the demand for children. 1. Income. Having children entails costs, which are both direct and indirect. There are direct financial costs associated with raising quality children. There are also opportunity costs of parents in pregnancy carrying, childbearing, and rearing. This means that parents always consider ways of financing these costs when planning to have children. The relationship between fertility and income depends on the type of good that parents attach to the children. If children are considered to be normal goods, then it is expected that an increase in income would lead to an increase in the demand for children by couples. This is because many parents feel comfortable at having children when they have enough income for child rearing and caring activities. However, the relationship between income and demand for children is affected by household preference over child quality. There is a trade-off between child quality and child quantity. Apart from income, other resources such as time is also important for pregnancy period, childbearing, child rearing. As a result, the income elasticity for child quality can be greater than income elasticity for child quantity, thus leading to a depressing effect on the number of children that the parents decide to have. 2. Parental education. Education affects fertility through its effects on the tastes of the parents. Education shapes the tastes of both parents, but many studies have emphasized the overriding effect of the woman's education attainments. There are many reasons why education can have effect on children's supply. They include the following. A. Education delays the time for having the first child because longer years of schooling and subsequent employment delays marriage and time available to have children. It takes time for women to complete their education, and if they do not desire to have children while at school, it takes a longer time for them to get married and start having children than those without education. In many developing countries, educated women marry later than those who are not. B. Labor force participation of educated women is higher. Education affects work opportunities for women. Hence, there is a high opportunity cost of children in the house. Child services are time intensive. The value of woman's time is important in household production. It is thus costly for women to have children, that is, the loss of salary during maternity, the cost of raising children. This includes the opportunity cost of the time the mother spends on pregnancy, childbirth, and child rearing. Due to this, many educated women do not have many children. C. Educated mothers prefer quality to quantity. That is, they want their children to get the best education money can afford. This increases the costs of raising children, thereby limiting the number of children desired by the women. This often makes women and their husbands to be more receptive to information about contraceptive. D. Education improves women's status and their bargaining power and independence within the household. It enables the woman to make their own choice in respect to any issue in the family. This also depends on the bargaining power of the woman in the household, which is a function of her contribution to the upbringing of the children. Another market failure issue is the free rider problem that exists in many developing countries. While it is assumed that parents will consider the benefits and costs of additional child before having a child, evidences have shown that there are divergences between individual costs and benefits of child rearing in societies where the burden of childbearing can be transferred usually through child fostering. Within this concept are issues such as those of child labor, child marriages, and trafficking. Where individuals can transfer some or all of the cost of child rearing to others, there is a probability for high fertility. There is also the issue of societal externalities, which implied that if everyone in the area have high fertility, it affects others. Every individual may prefer fewer children if they know that all other families have fewer children, but not in isolation. They are not willing to limit the number of their children. Isolation paradox. All proximate determinants are strongly conditioned by the behavior of other members of the community. When most of the families engage in practices that encourage high fertility, individual families may find it difficult to do otherwise. There are norms that affect fertility. It is generally agreed that there is a natural level of fertility within every culture. These societal norms of fertility are embedded on cultural norms. Beyond the above, these cultural norms affecting fertility includes factors such as appropriate age of marriage. While there is no consensus on when a woman should get married, it has been found that early marriages occur in many cultures. For instance, in certain parts of northern Nigeria, early marriage is prevalent, with girls getting married as early as 11 years old. This can increase the fertility rate of the region. Also, the number of births outside marriage. This is common in the southern part of Nigeria due to extramarital relationship, while in the north, the religious injunction that permits men to marry more than one wife accounts for less births outside marriage. Cultural practices on issues of child spacing, lactation, and breastfeeding time is also important. In addition is postpartum abstinence. This implies that as long as the woman gives exclusive breastfeeding, she is not likely to get pregnant soon. But if she stops breastfeeding early, before time, which is common among educated women, she is likely to be pregnant. Furthermore is the fertility history, especially the proportion of births that did not survive. This often happens in climes where there is high child mortality rate. Given this experience, there is the probability of high fertility. This is due to two types of responses that parents have to high child mortality. The responses are anticipatory response and replacement response. Anticipatory responses means that parents have many children on the assumption that they do not know how many of them will survive. The assumption is therefore to have as many children as possible and then believe that at least some of them will survive. The other is the replacement response, in which parents are always striving to have another child once one of the earlier children dies. Theories of population. The Malthusian population model. The model was developed by Reverend Thomas Malthus, and the basic idea was that population tends to grow at a geometric rate and double every 30 to 40 years. In contrast, food supply can only expand at an arithmetic rate due to the diminishing returns on available land. These are the two basic propositions of Malthus. He concluded that countries will be trapped at low income equilibrium points where there will be low per capita income as a result of low per capita food supplies. Essentially, the theory tries to show the relationship between population growth and economic development. That is, if this relationship is not well managed, it can lead to chronic low level of living or absolute poverty. The implication of the theory is that humans' capacity to increase in numbers is unmatched by his means of subsistence, and in the absence of measures to reduce fertility, population size will be checked by negative measures such as famines, disaster, wars, and so on. This point is equal to stage 1 of the demographic transition. As per capita income level rises above Y0 under the pressure of falling death rate, Y2 represents the situation where population achieves its maximum rate. It remains at this level until much higher per capita income levels are realized beyond Y5. Birth rate begins to decline and population growth rate becomes negatively sloped. The two curves, income growth rate and population growth rate curves, intersect at a point A, B and C. Point A is where Malthusian population trap level is. It is a stable equilibrium point. Between Y1 and Y2, per capita income falls to a low level at Y1. Point B is also an equilibrium, but it is unstable because of the movement patterns either to the right or its left. If capital income jumps rapidly from Y1 to beyond Y2 as a result of big push investment and industrialization, then the per capita income will continue to grow until the other equilibrium point C at Y4 is attained. Shortcomings of the Malthusian theory. 1. The hypothesis ignores the enormous impact of technological progress in offsetting the growth, inhibiting the forces of population growth. 2. It also assumes that the natural rate of growth population is positively related to the level of natural per capita income. That is, it looks at the relationship from the macroeconomic perspective. 3. It focuses on wrong variables, that is, per capita income. Recent empirical evidence have shown that population growth are as a result of decisions made at individual and family level and not at aggregate level. Demographic transition. Demography can be defined as the study of population, while demographic is the characteristics of the population. These characteristics include age, size, geographical distribution, educational status, gender, marital status, and their future evolution. Demographic transition describes the shift from a period in which population grows because birth rates exceed death rates to a period of low death and birth rates and thus little or no population growth. It defines the various paths that a population of a particular nation can follow by analyzing the differences between the complicated sequences of birth and death rates. Demographic transition theory tries to identify the various paths that a population of a particular nation can follow by analyzing the differences between the complication sequences of birth and death rates. Generally, the transition looks at the rate of population growth, stability, and transition over a nation's lifetime. The level of growth of different countries depends on the difference between birth rate and death rate. In demographic transition, there are 4 stages. Stage 1. This is often regarded as a stage of slow population growth. The belief is that at this stage, most economies are undeveloped, largely subsistent, agrarian, and peasant societies. As a result of the underdeveloped stage of the economy, there is bound to be poor diet, health, and sanitation, which definitely culminated in a very high death rate. In addition to the above, the high death rates are also associated with bad harvests, disaster, epidemics, and wars. However, the high death rates are matched by high birth rates. The birth rates are driven by the view of the parents who saw children as treasures and capital goods who must engage in production system to help such parents. Also, the low level of development treats children as social customs of insurance against old age. In addition, because parents already know of a high children mortality rate, there is the incentive to have many of them on the belief that some will at least survive. When this high birth rate is combined with a high death rate, the result is a slow population growth. But as the nation begins to experience some development, it moves to the second stage. Instead, birth rate continues to increase as fertility does not reduce as fast as mortality, and the result is rapidly increasing population growth. During this stage, the people do not have the conscious need to reduce birth rate because of the initial prosperity experienced due to the modernization and development. Many countries, especially LDS, that have experienced some decades of economic growth but whose structural transformation process has not gone very far fall into this category. This stage often exhibits a rapidly expanding total population with a rather high dependency ratio. Stage 3. This is a stage in which modernization and economic development are fully taken in by the country. During this stage, fertility starts declining and the decline in death rate is strengthening. The declining birth rate is as a result of the new structure and organization of production in modernization, which puts less emphasis on large family size. In addition, the decline in BR is reinforced by the fact that many women start to engage in more productive activities. In addition, development and modernization also leads to urbanization, which tends to weaken traditional customs and beliefs as well as foster modernizing attitudes on family planning. In this stage, the net annual growth of total population approaches zero, and the population can become stationary as soon as the rate of fertility declines sufficiently to match the decline in mortality. This stage 3 has been experienced by many development countries. Take 2. This stage 3 has been experienced by many developed economies. Stage 4. This is the declining stage. In this stage, DR continues to fall, but fertility falls quicker than the BR, and it leads to an actual decline in total population. In this situation, there will be an aging demographic structure. Usually, the low birth rate is associated with some deep-seated social psychological factors that tend to weaken the people's incentive to increase. In this stage, it may be necessary to take measures to stimulate fertility behavior so that the nation will not become extinct. The demography and economics of age structure. The age structure of a population is shown in the population pyramids in figures. The above pyramids show the great difference between age structure in developing countries and developed countries. We see in Nigeria, which is a developing country, that the young people outnumber the older ones. This makes the number of potential parents to increase when these young people reach their adulthood. This implies that there is possibility for the number of children being produced by these adults to increase over time, even when they decide to have less children compared to their parents. In contrast, for developed countries like USA, the population of people of age 20 differs a little from the 20 to 39 and 40 to 59 age. This implies that their population growth is slow over time. The issue of age structure has led to demographic dividend. This represents some windows of opportunity for economic growth occasioned by a large proportion of the population within the working age. The larger the population of the working age, the higher the production in the economy. At this stage, they will produce more than they need. This is known as the first demographic dividend. That is, there is a concentration of population in the working age. The first demographic dividend will eventually fade out as population increases over time. Therefore, countries must make effort to enjoy first demographic dividend. They should ensure this by making sure everyone in the working age is working, so that when they reach their old age, they will be able to use their savings for survival. Countries enjoy second demographic dividend when most of the population have grown old but are reaping high income because of the money they saved, invested in their working age. The second demographic dividend will be such that changes in age structure and the increase in life expectancy will lead to more rapid economic growth. Population aging puts pressure on a society's ability to support its elderly citizens. A commonly used indicator of this pressure is the elderly support ratio, calculated as the number of working age people aged 15 to 64 divided by the number of persons 65 or older. This ratio serves as a rough indicator of the number of potential providers of support per potential elderly dependent. In 1950, there were 12 working age people for every elderly person in the world. By 2010, this ratio had declined to 9, with the largest decline occurring in more developed countries, but the ratios still vary substantially across countries. We have come to the end of study session 2. Thanks for listening.